The biggest mistake of my life was thinking that the movie Murder was about a murder.
Hello and welcome to the Smut Shame podcast, where we talk about all things sex, intimacy, and girlhood, things we are taught to be ashamed about while growing up.
In this podcast, expect us to talk about everything that the dude bros are not talking about. We will not ask you to have an alternate income by the end of 2024.
I'm Amrita, coming to you straight from the headquarters of the sexual revolution in India, that sassy thing, where we're closing the pleasure gap one good vibe at a time.
I'm Ridhi. I'm a reader, a writer, and a yapper on Instagram. I'm coming from the community of I am just a girl, and I love yapping on Instagram and otherwise. So expect that here as well.
So whether you're folding some laundry or listening to this on a long commute to work, we're just here to give you some good vibes and giggles on the way.
In this podcast, we're going to talk about things that everyone thinks about, everyone wants, but everyone is not talking about. So we're going to talk about that, right, Amrita?
Yeah. So that actually reminds me. Have you ever had this really awkward moment where you're watching things with your family and you have this like race to the remote because of something that's coming on screen? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I have this really interesting story. I can't believe I'm saying this out loud, and I'm sure if my mom is listening to this, she will be waiting with a chappal at home that I'm talking about this on YouTube. Yeah. But we were watching this movie Love Actually. Okay. Now what I know about this movie is it's a rom-com, and girls love rom-coms. Yeah. I love rom-coms. Okay. I don't want to generalize, but I love rom-coms. Yeah. I think they're very easy to watch. They take the stress away from life. And I thought this was just like a generic rom-com that we're watching. I did not know that what we see on TV is usually censored, right? Yeah. So I got this film online and we were watching this. Imagine the setting. We're sitting in the living room. My aunt did not have a TV. They had a monitor. Yeah. So we're sitting, we have this monitor, we have this couch that we've put up, and the three of us are sitting there and we're watching this. It's connected to a speaker and everything. Yeah. My grandparents are sitting in the dining room. So it's like an open setting, right? Like it's a living room and a dining room, everything all at once. Yeah. So grandparents are sitting there, we are sitting here, we are watching this movie, we're vibing, we're enjoying. And in the middle, there's a scene where there's a woman who's nude up top and there's a man who's humping her with clothes on. I was very confused. My mom and my aunt were very confused. And we just continued watching like nothing happened because it felt very random in the movie. Now, I did not know that one plot point in the movie is it's a love story. It's sort of like multiple stories coming together. So one of the stories is two porn stars falling in love. Yeah. I did not know that, right, before watching this movie. So we continue watching. It's all cutesy, people are saying cute shit and everything. And then suddenly there's a whole ass sex scene in this where they are doing it. They're going for it. Okay. Yeah. My grandparents are sitting right there. My mom and my aunt, the speed at which they just got up and they were like, I have this work to do. I have that work to do. And they just got up and left. Suddenly. Yeah, suddenly. And I'm trying to switch it off and it's like the computer is freezing and it's lagging and it's not letting me do that. Yeah. And then the speaker is on full volume, trying to switch off the volume. I'm just like going for the power button. I'm like, just off now before anyone walks in and sees this. It was so awkward. I do not want to relive that again. I just I feel so living that. Yeah. I think for me, it was also the biggest mistake of my life was thinking that the movie Murder was about a murder. Little did I know that it's actually not about murder. So I know that I had not mentioned which member of my family was watching Murder, but someone from my family was watching Murder. And there's this song that became really popular later, Bhige Hote Re. So the video was on the TV. And I was like, interesting. This is not what I see usually. That is a visit. So it was very natural. The video was going around. I was like, interesting video. Let's sit and watch. And it was on TV, right? So this person who's watching this video is sitting in front of the TV, glued to the TV, if I may. And I am just like this, like how Indian fathers sometimes randomly get interested into the, whatever you're watching. So I was interested in that. And then my mom came. She's like, kya dekh rahe ho? Emraan Hashmi dekh rahe ho? And I was like, matlab.
nice song. They're loving each other. My mom was like, shit, what are you watching here? This is not what you watch. And then my mom scolded me for that. She's like, this is not a movie that you should watch. This is not for kids. And then she's like, Emraan Hashmi is not a good person. Emraan Hashmi is not a good actor. I'm like, okay, theek hai, got it. Wow. So yeah, I think that was my first encounter with the representation of it on television. And yes, I just realized from that day onwards, I realized that, okay, scenes like this should not be watched with family, because I didn't know I will definitely want to watch it.
Yeah, but it's not something you can help, right? Like when you're sitting with family, I think growing up, at least now things are changing, of course, but growing up it was like everyone has to watch whatever's coming on TV. Like I had to watch my grandma's Tamil serials. I had to watch my mom's dramatic Kannada serials. I had to watch my brother's WWE wrestling. I had to watch my dad's Adalat. And I also got to watch like my cartoons and my like Shararat and all of that growing up. So it's like whatever's coming on TV, everyone's there. Everyone's glued to it. Everyone's, you know. And that's when like you're sitting with your family and a condom ad comes on. That is like I think the worst nightmare for not just kids but mostly parents, because I think the biggest fear for them is, how do I explain this to my child? Like if it's a really young child, like I remember this one time, right? So there's this Tamil TV show where this young girl in school, she calls her mom in the middle of the day from school and she's crying. Okay. And then the mom is smiling. And she's happy. And I'm so confused. What is happening? Like the girl is crying and the mom is smiling. And she's going around the house and telling everybody, like, she's acting like it's some good news. And this girl comes home and they dress her up and everything. And she's still crying and she's she doesn't know what's happening to her. And everyone in the family is so happy and they're celebrating it. So I looked at my mom and my aunt and I was like, what is happening? Why? Like, she's crying. What does this mean? So she got her period in that scene.
Oh my God.
And I was too young, I think, for my mom to be explaining what that is to me. So she panicked for a second and she didn't know what to say. And I feel like that's the thing. It's almost like they're forced in that moment to educate you or to not talk about
avoid it.
To completely avoid it. And that's where it all starts, right? Like the avoidance of the topic of sex, where you see it on screen. You can't help it. You can't escape it. But yeah, somehow parents do that.
Also the ads of sanitary napkins, oh my God. When I watched the ad for the first time, I literally thought, and my brother was involved in it, if he's watching. The first time we watched that ad, both of us thought it's something related to women getting wings. Because the girl in the ad is just prancing around, she's flying, she's having the time of her life, and she's wearing like white pants and she's going around flying here and there, this powerful all around. So I thought for the longest time that this sanitary napkin either helps you fly, gives you wings, or is, I don't know, something of that sort. And I went to my mom and I was like, I want one. And my brother was included in this conversation. Like, I also want one. And then my mother got mad at us and she's like, it's not for that. So then we deduced that, okay, this is for something serious, okay? This is not for flying and all. So then we decided maybe it's for putting, when you're in pain, then you put it as like a patch or something.
Like a pain relief patch.
Yeah, like a pain relief patch. And little did I know it causes pain. So, and then years later, when I got to know what a pad is actually used for, oh my God, it's the biggest disappointment of all times. And then I hate the ads so much now. How the women are behaving in those ads.
It's really not realistic. I'm not happy flying. I really wish that's how it felt. But the menstrual cycle is no joke. So I think that was really awkward, like watching, coming across sex scenes on TV, but it's kind of normalized now, I think. I would owe it all to the rise of OTT and things like that. I think the way we watch things has completely changed. Like, we were forced to watch TV before, and we were forced to like sit there, and that was the only source of entertainment. Or it was in the theaters. I think there was this one movie I watched with my parents in the theater. It was London, Paris, New York. Horrible movie. But I was really excited about it, and I remember like even anything remotely romantic, right? My parents would just like sort of brush it off, or they would like, I think that defined a lot of what romance, what sex, what intimacy means to me growing up. Like we had to learn a lot of those things on our own. But I think seeing that on TV, it gives you unrealistic expectations of what it's supposed to look like, what it's supposed to feel like.
Yeah.
And
there's also, I feel like that we were forced to, I wouldn't really say it was all bad, because it also helped families really get together, watching something together. But earlier, consuming anything was like a collective experience. Now there's division of categories. So Netflix also, there's a section for kids, and if your mom, dad have an account, they have different. And you can have your own. And if you're sharing it with your family, then you should be a little cautious about your search history also.
I don't think my mom cares about her search history. If I'm watching something with my mom or dad, I think they are just like, sometimes I see some really like questionable shows in the search history. Like, I did not watch that, but good for you. You know?
Absolutely.
But I think there's more to sex scenes in TV shows and movies. Like, a lot of people think, is it really relevant to the plot? I've seen a lot of complaints of people talking about like, itne sex scenes kyun hai, especially in shows like Game of Thrones and all of that, right? Like, people say that it's too many. But I heard something interesting. So one of my exes, he used to really enjoy, he did not enjoy porn. He thought it was too explicit. He thought it was too, he found it disgusting and gross, and he didn't really like it. And what he did enjoy was, I would call it softcore porn, which is like sex scenes, like intimate scenes from like steamy, like he would Google things like the steamy scenes, intimate scenes, sex scenes from TV shows and movies and things like that. So I think it's really interesting that some people find that arousing, because I think when I'm watching a TV show, I don't really find the scene arousing. It's more for the plot. Like, I'm watching for the plot more than anything, if that makes sense.
No, I definitely do that. I think I'm some people, because I'll tell you two things that I very explicitly, I still do, which I'm guilty of. So Gilmore Girls is my comfort show, right? And if there's any, if there's like any, and I've done that with Made in Heaven also, I think. If there's any makeout scene or if there's any cute kissing scene, I would first do kiki, and then I'd like go back, replay it. And then I'll go back, replay it again.
What's like one of your favorite like scenes from a show that you watch?
I feel very guilty accepting it. But so there's this division, right? It's that one is Rory and Jess group.
Yeah.
And the other is Rory and Dean. Was his name Dean? There was Logan also.
There's Logan also.
So, but Dean, I found Dean very hot. Right. So, but then because at that time I had the bad boy liking, I had given into the bad boy trope. So I liked Jess a lot.
Right.
So there's this scene where there's just in public they're making out and they're kissing. And I love that because there was a lot of build up to that. All of them had, both of them had actually dated separate people for a really long time, and then finally they meet and finally they
It was like a slow burn.
Yeah. And they just can't like pull themselves away from each other. And I remember going back to it good 2 to 3 times and then watching it again and again and again. And later also going on YouTube and like searching for that specific scene. So I am that person. I think I'm a person who would like go to a site at 2 a.m. and search for forehead kisses.
That's huge. Like, wait, forehead kisses?
Yeah, forehead kisses and
that's so sweet.
Soft. Yeah, 7. So yeah, the website will be like, please, it's somewhere else. This is not
the site for this.
This is not the site for this, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like, I have also talked to a lot of people who are demisexual, where they require some kind of emotional connection or intimacy with before finding them attractive physically or doing anything with them physically. And I think that's maybe one of the main reasons also that search terms like, intimate scenes, sex scenes, steamy scenes are like really popular. And people keep going back to these, and there's a lot of role playing also that happens, like where people try to recreate these scenes, I strongly remember that scene from Friends where Rachel dresses up as Princess Leia from like Star Wars. And everyone goes gaga over that. Like, I think also Jennifer Aniston in general.
Yeah.
But it's interesting though, we're talking about sex scenes because in India, we've been talking about a lot of Western examples. And you mentioned him, Emraan Hashmi, but way before that, if you look at like sex scenes in movies, it's not like they were trying to avoid it. But they had very interesting ways of showing sex scenes in movies. They would show like 2 flowers and just like aggressively rubbing
Yeah. Or like all of a sudden, if it's the Suhagraj scene, both of them, and then they just wake up, and then it's morning.
Yeah, and then that happens.
Like, bed moving a little bit, they sleep, and then it's morning.
Yeah. It actually reminds me, there's this really popular actor in the Kannada film industry. His name is Ravi Chandran. Okay. And he's sort of known as like a sex god, I would say. I mean, I don't think I would say he's sort of like a sex god. He is the Emraan Hashmi of the Kannada film industry. He has a lot. To Google later. Yeah. So this man would have a lot of like music videos. It's mostly like movies and music videos where very sensual stuff happens. So it's the navel shot, the popular navel shot.
It's coming back also.
It's coming back in the in the Telugu film, right? Yeah. So he was huge on the navel shot. Like you would see his face, and then you would see someone's navel. Like that is the this thing etched in my brain. And I was just going through for research for this podcast. I was just watching some of his music videos from the past, and also feeling nostalgic because like I've listened to these songs growing up.
Yeah.
And in one of the shots, the thing is that, right, they go to bed, like she's there and then he slowly like reclines onto her. And then the camera fades away and then suddenly they're dancing in like this mountain. And that is a sex scene, apparently. That is sex. Yeah. So you can imagine like young kids looking at that going like, is that...
Sometimes it's also really weird shots. Like in old movies, it's like woman's head like this and then their head like this and then there's fire and then there's stars and then there's rain and there's... So they will use all elements of nature.
Yeah.
Except showing the real thing, showing the thing for what it is.
I've seen some movies also have this thing where like there'll be a bush and there'll be clothes spread everywhere. It's like one by one there's a trail of clothes and then there'll be like something happening in the bushes. Like some aggressive wrestling or something like that. And this reminds me actually of the scene from Prema Gun. Have you watched that?
No.
Oh my god, yeah. So this is a scene in Prema Gun where she's like on her she's on her force.
Oh, that!
Yeah. Yeah. She's on her force and then she looks at him and she goes, "Mujhe wo haseen dard de."
Oh shit! Oh my god, that's so embarrassing to watch.
It's second-hand embarrassment. It's really bad. Yeah. So I think in that way, when you think about it, sex in India has been treated very differently from the West. I think we've not been a very progressive society, even though we've had texts, ancient texts like Kama Sutra, which is something we've spoken about in previous episodes. I think a lot of the regressive aspects came in after colonization with a lot of the rules that the British brought in. They got in their Victorian rules. You know, one of the most relevant examples I would say is like Section 377, where they basically criminalized queer people and like homosexuality, and thankfully we had the brains to like undo that damage, and we're trying to still undo that damage, and it's going to take forever to do that, but I think that's where we became sort of a prudish society. I don't know if I can pinpoint it to colonization, but I would say that's one of the things that really cemented our status as a regressive society who doesn't want to talk about sex education or anything like that. So looking back, I think even literature has a very big role to play in this journey of sex in India. If you look at Mills and Bones, that was huge in India, and that was because of unofficial distribution of the books. It wasn't even like it wasn't officially released in the Indian market, and you would find it in every house, like covered in like brown paper wrapping and like people reading it secretly. And the readership was not just women and girls, which we spoke about in our previous episodes also. I think the readership extended to men also, because everyone was curious. Like nobody spoke about it. You just started the episode that way, right? Like, nobody spoke about it. Everyone thought about it, but nobody wanted to talk about it. So that was a great, I think, entry into talking, like reading about sex, and then all of those magazines like Lakshmi that you mentioned. So I think I read somewhere that in 2008 was finally when it was officially published in the Indian market with Indian characters, like Mills and Bones. They finally had Indian characters targeted towards the Indian market. But Mills and Bones died out and then entered like 50 Shades of Grey.
I think a very similar thing, you So in literature, it was Smells and Bones, and a lot of like local writers were writing the scenes in the magazines, stories in the magazines. But I feel like in media, a similar thing, and I'm talking about it because I think it's very relevant right now. So during that time when my father was sort of exploring right intimacy, I think at that time Chamkila's songs were very explicit. It was not whatever was being talked about in the songs. It was not implicit at all. It was about extramarital relationships. Sometimes it was specifically about sex. Sometimes it was specifically about like bathing together or stuff like that, right?
And RBG and all that.
Yeah, and people had problems with that song, and there was censorship imposed and all of that. But Chamkila grew so much for that itself because people wanted to, and he said that also. There's a scene in this movie also.
I watched the.
He says that particularly that everyone's talking about it. Why am I popular? I am popular because people want to listen about it. It's not like if they're irked or if they're so embarrassed by it, then why do they listen to it?
Yeah.
The only difference is that they listen to it away from their children.
Yeah.
Right. And by the end of the movie, there is this scene where the police officer who's been against Chamkila all his life, he sort of catches his own son listening to Chamkila.
Yeah.
But his son is just listening to Chamkila, not like doing anything, just casually listening to it, doing homework. And by the end of the movie, the police officer realizes that, hey, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's just okay. It's just listening to a song.
Yeah.
And so there is this moment of acceptance and their relationship sort of glowing in that moment, that a parent is okay with this child probably listening to a song which has sexual content in it.
Yeah.
And that moment in itself is like really big.
Yeah. So you were talking about Chamkila. It reminded me of, another, I think, very interesting example of repressed India secretly being like very ratchet.
Yeah.
And very like naughty. And that was the Ask This Expert column in the Bangalore Mirror, Mumbai Mirror newspaper. This was by Dr. Mahinder Vatsa. And I remember as a child, like running in the morning to the paper and trying to grab it and read that column, right? Secretively. Because I think even my parents knew when I was reaching out for that particular newspaper that they knew what I was going to read. So I would do a little bit of pretending of reading like the national news and like global news.
Sports column.
Yeah, sports column. I need to know. I want to be informed,
Yeah.
And then I would also slip in the Bangalore Mirror and then I would keep that in front of the other one and I would read this Ask This Expert column. And there would be such, like, the questions are out of the kind of questions that Indians have about sex, about their bodies. It's wild because that reminds you that we need sex education.
Yeah.
We need to teach Indians what their bodies mean, what each body part means, what other body parts on other people mean, and how, to have safe consensual sex. Because, I want to read out a few excerpts from it. It was really funny. I'll read this out actually for you. So one of the things was, I am 18 years old and my testicles are larger than those I see in films. Should I be wearing a supporter all day long? And he says, do you watch movies with a ruler in one hand? Then why not measure ears and other parts of the body as well? If you have any doubt, see your doctor. So there's this other thing also, this other really funny testimonial. If I have sex with my wife in a bathtub with a condom on, will she get pregnant? Won't the semen get washed off or diluted? Please answer.
God.
Water will not enter the vagina, but your penis will. The possible end result will not be a mermaid.
Wow. Love.
This man was iconic, dude. Like, he was a consultant for the Family Planning Association of India. And he actually proposed that you need to introduce sexual counseling as a part, like sexual counseling and education as a part of the curriculum there. And they accepted his advice and they started the first sex therapy center in India after taking his advice. And sadly, he passed away a few years ago. But I think looking back at it now, I used to read it as a guilty pleasure, right? Like, oh my God, sex. Yeah. But now looking back at it, he's probably like informed so many Indians who did not have Reddit, who did not have Google, who did not have any other source ask these questions and these really like very important questions. I feel, they're stupid, but they're important because we're not taught about these things.
Yeah.
So I think it's like how we see sex on screen really makes a difference.
Yeah. I think it's an unlearning because in the beginning of the episode, we were talking about our first instances where we were I don't know, we introduced to sex, we were introduced to intimacy, and from there to now watching sex ed on TV and all of that. It's a journey in itself, right? But yeah, I will never forget the firsts and how horrible the firsts were.
You know, talking about like how this episode has come full circle, and you know, we talked about different instances of sex scenes we have seen on TV and things like that. I want to end this episode also on Emraan Hashmi because you started it with this. So I found this quote online where in this interview he said that he's just like tired of kissing. Okay, I will.
Of course, with the kissing that he did.
Yeah. He's like, यार 17 साल से करके दिखाओ. 20 kisses a film. मेरे होंठ सूज गए हैं यार.
Oh my god. From ये होठ तेरे to like the man actually coming in an interview and saying, wow,
होंठ सूज गए.
You did not have to do that to me, Amrita. I wanted to imagine Emraan Hashmi as the Bollywood sex god. Thank you for ruining that.
I think he's tired.
Yeah, he's tired.
Let's give the man a break.
And let's take a break ourselves now.
Yeah, let's take a break ourselves. Yeah. So we dropped a lot of truth bombs in this episode. If you want more truth bombs about sex, intimacy, and all things girlhood, hit the subscribe button.
And if you have any spicy stories of grabbing the remote and feeling ashamed of watching a sex scene, let us know in the comments. This podcast is the absolute opposite of a podcast bro telling you to have an alternate income by the end of 2024. We will not be doing that.